Damn, that's him.
Sir, you want me to circle the block?
No, stay here. He looks just like me.
Marcus Cole didn't plan to slam the brakes that hard. The black SUV screeched to a violent stop in the middle of the quiet Houston street, tires screaming, engine growling like it was just as nervous as he was. For a man worth billions, a man who had stared down hostile takeovers and courtroom sharks without blinking, his hands were shaking. Because across the sidewalk, under the fading orange glow of a street lamp, stood a boy who looked exactly like him. Marcus pushed the door open before the driver could move. "Stay here," he muttered, his voice rougher than usual. His polished shoes hit the pavement. The night air was thick, humid, the kind of southern heat that clung to your skin, but Marcus barely felt it. His eyes were locked on the boy walking up the driveway of a modest brick house. Tall for his age. Maybe 14. Broad shoulders already forming. And that jawline. God. Marcus swallowed hard. "Sir," the driver called cautiously. Marcus didn't answer. He was already walking. Every step toward that house felt heavier than the last, like the weight of 15 years was stacked on his chest. He had rehearsed this moment on the private jet. Practiced calm words. Controlled breathing. The same cold composure that made boardrooms fall silent when he entered. But now his pulse was pounding like he was 22 and broke again. The front door opened just as the boy reached the porch. And then Marcus saw her. Lila Brooks. Time hadn't erased her, it had refined her. Her curls were shorter now, streaked slightly with age, but her posture was still straight, still steady. Still the only woman who had ever made Marcus Cole feel seen before the world knew his name. Her eyes lifted. Locked onto his. No shock. No dramatic gasp. Just a long, quiet look that made his stomach drop. "Well," Lila said slowly, her voice calm but sharp around the edges, "look who finally found the right address." Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The boy looked between them, confused at first, then something shifted in his face. His eyes narrowed slightly, studying Marcus with a sharpness that made Marcus's chest tighten. "Mom," the boy said slowly, "who is?" Lila didn't take her eyes off Marcus. "Jaden," she said quietly, "go inside for a minute." The boy didn't move. "I'm not a kid," he said, his voice firm but controlled. "If he's here, I want to know why." Marcus felt that one like a punch. Not a kid. Of course he wasn't. Because Marcus hadn't been there for any of the years that turned him into one. Lila finally sighed, the sound tired but not weak. She stepped aside slightly and folded her arms. "You heard him. If you came all this way, Marcus, you might as well talk." Hearing his name and her voice again after 15 years did something ugly to his chest. Marcus cleared his throat. "I didn't come to cause trouble." Jaden let out a short, humorless laugh. "People with suits like that don't show up in neighborhoods like this for fun." Marcus's jaw tightened. Sharp kid. Too sharp. He forced himself to look directly at the boy. Really look this time. And there it was again, that unbearable familiarity. The same dark eyes Marcus saw in the mirror every morning. The same stubborn set to his shoulders. God. He dragged a slow breath into his lungs. "I came," Marcus said carefully, "because I think, we need to talk." Jaden's expression didn't soften. If anything, it hardened. "About what?" the boy asked flatly. Marcus hesitated. For the first time in his perfectly controlled life, the words didn't come easy. Lila watched him closely, her face unreadable, but her fingers curled slightly against her arms, the only sign she wasn't as calm as she looked. Marcus noticed. Of course he noticed. He used to know every small tell she had. Used to. "I know I'm late," Marcus finally said. Jaden's laugh this time was sharper. Late, he repeated. Man, you're about 14 years late. The words sliced clean and deep. Marcus's chest tightened painfully. Lila closed her eyes briefly, like she'd expected that one. Silence stretched across the small front yard, thick and uncomfortable. Marcus forced himself not to retreat. He had faced worse rooms than this. Hadn't he? But the truth crept in slowly, uncomfortably. No boardroom had ever made his hands shake like this. No billion-dollar deal had ever made his throat feel this tight. I deserve that, Marcus admitted quietly. Jaden studied him for a long moment. Then the boy said the one sentence Marcus would replay in his head for the rest of his life. So now you remember us. The night went very, very still. And for the first time since Marcus Cole built his empire from nothing, he had absolutely no idea what to say next. 15 years earlier, Marcus Cole had been a very different man. Back then, the world didn't know his name. There were no magazine covers, no private jets, no assistants scheduling every minute of his life. Just long shifts at a shipping warehouse outside Houston and a head full of dangerous ambition. He used to clock in before sunrise, coffee in one hand, cheap work gloves in the other, already mapping out a future that felt miles away from the sweat and noise of that place. That was where he first saw Lila Brooks. She sat behind the front desk like she belonged somewhere better, back straight, curls tied back with a bright red scarf, fingers flying over paperwork while the rest of the place moved in its usual slow chaos. Marcus noticed her because she smiled. Not the fake customer service kind. A real one. The kind that made the long shifts feel shorter. For weeks, he kept it casual. A nod here. A quick joke there. Nothing serious. Until one night changed everything. It was past closing, the warehouse finally quiet except for the hum of overhead lights. Marcus was halfway out the door when he heard her voice behind him. You always walk that fast, or you just trying to beat traffic that don't exist? He turned. Lila was leaning against the front desk, one eyebrow raised, that small teasing smile playing on her lips. Marcus smirked. Maybe I got places to be. She said, unconvinced. At 11:30 at night? He shrugged. You never know. She studied him for a second longer, then pushed off the desk. There's a taco truck still open down the street, she said casually. If you're not actually busy being mysterious. Marcus should have said no. Back then, his focus was sharp, almost ruthless even before the money came. Every minute counted. Every distraction was dangerous. But something about the way she said it, easy, unpressured, made him pause. He exhaled slowly. Yeah, he said finally. I could eat. Lila's smile widened just a little. And just like that, everything started shifting. That first night turned into late drives with the windows down, Houston air rushing through the car while they talked about everything and nothing. Marcus told her about the tech idea he was quietly building on the side, his voice low but intense. One good break, he said one night, fingers tapping the steering wheel, that's all I need. I'm not staying stuck here forever. Lila glanced at him, her expression soft but thoughtful. I know you won't, she said. Not if. When. That was the thing about Lila. She believed in him before the world had any reason to. And for a while, Marcus let himself believe he could have both. The dream. And her. He didn't realize then how fast life could force you to choose. The night everything fell apart started quietly. Too quietly. Marcus still remembered the way the cheap apartment smelled like takeout and laundry detergent, the soft hum of the old ceiling fan clicking overhead. Back then, his world was small but controlled. Predictable. Safe. He had just come back from a meeting that had his blood buzzing, the kind of meeting that makes a hungry man see the future in bright, dangerous colors. His tech idea was finally getting attention. Real investors. Real money on the table. This was the break. The one he had been grinding toward for years. Lila was sitting on the edge of the couch when he walked in, hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked different. Too still. Marcus dropped his keys into the small bowl by the door. "You good?" he asked casually, already halfway distracted by the numbers still running through his head. She nodded once. Then shook her head. His brow furrowed slightly. "Lila?" Her voice, when it came, was soft. "Careful. I went to the clinic today." Something in Marcus's chest shifted. Not panic yet. Just, alert. He moved a little closer. "Everything okay?" Lila looked up at him. And in that moment, Marcus would later realize, his entire life stood at a crossroads. "I'm pregnant." The words landed gently. But the impact was violent. For a split second, Marcus just stared at her. His brain refused to process what his ears had clearly heard. Pregnant. No. No, no, no. Not now. Not when everything was finally starting to move. His chest tightened, thoughts colliding fast and ugly. The investors. The deal. The risk. The timing. God, the timing. Lila watched his face carefully, and the hope there, small but bright, made something uncomfortable twist in his stomach. "Marcus," she said quietly. He dragged a hand down his face, pacing once across the small living room. This wasn't planned," he muttered. "I know," she said quickly. "But we can figure it out. We always do." "We." The word pressed against his nerves. Because suddenly, all Marcus could see was everything this would cost him. The long nights he wouldn't have. The risks he couldn't take. The way investors looked at young men with too much responsibility already strapped to their backs. His voice came out sharper than he intended. "You went to the doctor already?" Lila's brows pulled together slightly. "Of course." "Marcus, listen." "You sure?" he cut in. She blinked. "Sure about what?" And then Marcus made the mistake that would haunt him for the next 15 years. The words came out cold. Defensive. Ugly. "You sure it's mine?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Lila didn't gasp. Didn't yell. Didn't throw anything. She just stared at him. And something in her eyes, something warm and trusting that had always been there, slowly cracked. Marcus felt it happen in real time. But pride is a dangerous thing. And fear is even worse. "You don't mean that," Lila said quietly, but her voice had changed. Less soft. More careful. Marcus crossed his arms, jaw tight. "I just think we should be smart about this." "Smart?" she repeated. He nodded once, clinging to logic because it felt safer than the guilt already creeping into his chest. "I've got a lot on the line right now, Lila. Investors, contracts, my whole future is about to shift. This isn't exactly convenient," she finished softly. The word hit harder than he expected. Marcus exhaled sharply. "That's not what I said." "But it's what you meant." Her voice wasn't loud. That made it worse. Because Lila Brooks had never been dramatic. Never been the type to raise her voice just to be heard. When she got quiet like this, it meant the damage was already deep. Marcus looked away first. "I just need time to think," he muttered. Lila let out a slow breath, and when Marcus finally forced himself to look back at her, the hope that had been in her eyes earlier was gone. Not angry. Not hysterical. Just, gone. "Okay," she said simply. 2 letters. But Marcus would later realize that was the exact moment everything between them started dying. The next 2 weeks moved fast. Too fast. Marcus buried himself in meetings, phone calls, late-night strategy sessions. Every time his chest tightened with something that felt suspiciously like guilt, he drowned it in numbers and forward momentum. Success was close enough to taste. He told himself he was doing the smart thing. The necessary thing. The American thing. Build first. Fix everything else later. That's what winners did. Right? But Lila grew quieter. More distant. She stopped asking about his meetings. Stopped waiting up for him at night. Stopped saying, "we," when she talked about the future. Marcus noticed. Of course he noticed. But instead of confronting it, he leaned harder into the one thing that still made sense. Work. Then the offer came. Big. Bigger than anything he'd expected this early. A chance to move operations to Atlanta. Real funding. Real connections. The kind of leap that could change everything overnight. Marcus stared at the contract for a long time. Because deep down, he knew what this meant. That night, he found Lila in the kitchen, quietly washing dishes. The small apartment felt unusually quiet, like it was already bracing for something. "I got an opportunity," Marcus said carefully. She didn't turn around. "In Houston?" His throat tightened slightly. "Atlanta." The water kept running. For a long moment, Lila said nothing. Then she slowly turned off the faucet and dried her hands on a towel. "When?" she asked. "Soon," Marcus admitted. "Real soon." Her eyes searched his face, and Marcus had the uncomfortable feeling she was already reading the decision he hadn't said out loud yet. "And what about us?" she asked softly. Marcus hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. Lila's shoulders lowered slightly, like something inside her had just settled into place. "I see," she whispered. Marcus stepped forward. "Lila, it's not like that. I just need to get established first. Once things are stable, I can." "You can what?" she asked gently. He stopped. Because suddenly, the promises he'd been about to make sounded thin even in his own head. Lila nodded slowly, like she understood more than he was saying. "You should go," she said quietly. Marcus blinked. "What?" "You've always been chasing something bigger," she continued. "I knew that when I met you." Her voice didn't shake. That almost broke him more than anger would have. "But don't stand here and pretend this decision is temporary," she added softly. Marcus's jaw tightened. Pride flared. Defense mode. "I'm doing what I have to do," he said firmly. Lila held his gaze for a long, heavy moment. Then she nodded once. "Okay, Marcus," she said. And just like that, she let him go. Marcus left for Atlanta 2 weeks later. He told himself he'd call. Told himself he'd send money. Told himself he'd come back once everything was secure. But success moves fast. And guilt moves quiet. Atlanta moved fast, and Marcus Cole moved faster. Within 5 years, the broke warehouse worker from Houston was gone, replaced by a man whose name started showing up in business magazines and tech blogs. By year 10, Marcus wasn't just successful, he was untouchable. Glass offices. Black cars. Tailored suits that cost more than his old monthly rent. People stood when he entered rooms now. Investors leaned forward when he spoke. Competitors learned quickly that Marcus Cole didn't hesitate when it was time to win. And for a long time, he told himself the trade had been worth it. But success has a way of getting quiet at night. The first crack showed up on a Tuesday morning. Marcus was halfway through a high-stakes meeting on the 32nd floor of Coltech headquarters when the pressure hit his chest. Not sharp. Not dramatic. Just, tight. Like someone slowly turning a screw beneath his ribs. He paused mid-sentence. Across the table, his CFO frowned. "Marcus?" Marcus straightened slightly. "I'm fine." "Continue." The meeting went on. Because that's what Marcus Cole did. He pushed through. He always had. But the pressure came back that night. Then again 2 days later. By the time his assistant practically forced him into a private doctor's office, Marcus was already irritated. "This is unnecessary," he muttered, adjusting the cuff of his shirt. The doctor, calm, older, annoyingly observant, didn't look impressed. "Humor me," the man said. An hour later, Marcus sat stiffly in the consultation chair while the doctor studied his chart. "Well," the doctor said finally, "you're not dying today." Marcus gave a dry huff. "Comforting." "But," the doctor continued, folding his hands, "you are running your body like a machine with no off switch. Stress levels are high. Blood pressure's climbing. And whatever you've been ignoring emotionally, that's not helping either." Marcus's expression cooled instantly. "I didn't come here for therapy." The doctor didn't flinch. "Most powerful men don't," he said calmly. "But they usually end up needing it anyway." Marcus stood smoothly, already reaching for his jacket. "Send the bill to my office." But the doctor's final words followed him out. "Money fixes a lot of things, Mr. Cole. Just not the things that keep people awake at night." Marcus didn't respond. But that night, sleep didn't come easy. The penthouse was too quiet. Too clean. Too empty. Marcus stood barefoot in front of the massive window overlooking Atlanta's glittering skyline, a glass of untouched whiskey in his hand. Normally, the view calmed him. Reminded him of how far he'd come. Tonight, it just felt distant. His chest tightened again. Not pain this time. Memory. And before he could stop it, before the usual walls slammed back into place, one name slipped through the cracks. Lila. Marcus exhaled slowly, jaw tightening. He hadn't said her name out loud in years. Hadn't needed to. Because for a long time, success had been loud enough to drown out everything else. But now. Now the silence was winning. He set the glass down harder than necessary. "This is stupid," he muttered to the empty room. Still. His hand moved. Almost on its own. Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed the one person who could find anyone. The call connected on the second ring. "Cole," the voice answered smoothly. "I need you to locate someone," Marcus said without preamble. A brief pause. "Old business or personal?" Marcus hesitated. Just for half a second. "Personal." That got the man's full attention. "Name?" Marcus stared out at the city lights. "Lila Brooks." The silence on the other end stretched just long enough to feel intentional. "Understood," the investigator finally said. "Give me 48 hours. The line went dead. Marcus stood there for a long time after. 48 hours. He told himself this was just closure. Just tying up loose ends. Just curiosity. But deep down, something uneasy had already started moving in his chest. 48 hours turned into 36. The call came in while Marcus was reviewing quarterly projections. "Talk," Marcus said sharply, already reaching for a pen. "I found her," the investigator replied. Marcus's grip tightened slightly. "Location?" "Houston suburb." "Same state you left her in." "No marriage records." "One dependent listed." Marcus went very still. "Age?" he asked quietly. Paper shuffled on the other end. 14. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Marcus leaned back slowly in his chair, heart beginning to pound in a way that had nothing to do with stress or blood pressure. 14. The math hit hard. Too hard. "Send me the address," Marcus said. His voice was steady. But his pulse wasn't. The private jet left Atlanta that same evening. Marcus spent most of the flight staring out the window, watching clouds blur beneath the wing while thoughts he'd buried for years started clawing their way back to the surface. What if she slammed the door in his face? What if the kid hated him? What if? He cut the thought off sharply. Marcus Cole didn't deal in what-ifs. He dealt in outcomes. Still, by the time the SUV rolled into the quiet Houston neighborhood hours later, something unfamiliar had settled low in his chest. Not fear, not exactly. But close enough to make his fingers tap restlessly against his knee. The driver slowed near the modest brick house. "This is the address, sir." Marcus stared through the tinted window. The house was small. Well kept. Normal. Painfully normal. Nothing like the life he'd built. Nothing like the life he'd left behind. He was just about to tell the driver to circle the block, just to think for one more minute. When the front door opened. And a tall teenage boy stepped out onto the porch. Marcus's breath caught. Because even from across the street, even under the dim streetlight, there was no mistaking it. The kid looked exactly like him. And before Marcus could stop himself, his hand was already reaching for the door handle. Marcus had closed billion-dollar deals with less hesitation than it took to cross that small front yard. Each step toward the porch felt heavier than the last, like the air itself was pushing back. The boy stood there watching him now, arms loosely at his sides, eyes sharp and cautious. Not scared. Not impressed. Just, guarded. Marcus recognized that look. He'd worn it himself most of his life. Up close, the resemblance hit even harder. Same eyes. Same stubborn line to the mouth. Same quiet strength in the shoulders. God. Marcus stopped a few feet from the steps, suddenly aware that for the first time in years, he had no script. No negotiation angle. No clean way to control the outcome. The front door opened behind the boy. Lila stepped out slowly. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The Texas night hummed softly around them, distant traffic, the buzz of insects, the faint creak of the porch light swinging overhead. Finally, Lila broke the silence. "You've been standing out here long enough to say something," she said calmly. Marcus exhaled slowly, forcing his voice to stay steady. "I didn't want to just show up without warning." Jaden let out a short breath that almost sounded like a scoff. "That's funny. Kinda seems like that's exactly what you did." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he didn't snap back. Old Marcus would have. This Marcus knew better. "I deserve that," he said quietly. That made Jaden's brows pull together slightly, like he hadn't expected the admission. Lila watched Marcus carefully, her eyes searching his face the way they used to years ago, like she was measuring whether anything real had changed. "What do you want, Marcus?" she asked. Straight to it. She always had been like that. Marcus swallowed. "I want to talk," he said. "Both of you." Jaden shifted his weight. "About what?" Marcus met his eyes fully now. "About the years I wasn't here." The honesty in his voice surprised even him. Jaden's expression hardened again. "You mean the years you disappeared," the boy said flatly. The words landed clean. Accurate. Marcus nodded once. "Yeah. Those years." Silence stretched. Then Lila stepped aside slightly and pushed the screen door open. "You might as well come in," she said. "Standing out here isn't going to fix anything." Inside, the house was warm and lived in. Not fancy. Not polished. But there was something steady about it that made Marcus's chest tighten in a way his glass penthouse never had. Family photos lined one wall. Jaden at different ages. School pictures. Basketball games. Birthday candles. Marcus's gaze lingered a second too long. Jaden noticed. "You missed a lot," the boy said quietly. Not loud. Not emotional. Just factual. And somehow that hurt more. Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah, he admitted. I did. They sat in the living room, Lila in the armchair, Jaden on the edge of the couch, Marcus across from them feeling more out of place than he ever had in any boardroom. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Jaden leaned forward slightly, eyes locked on Marcus. So say it, he said. Marcus blinked. Say what? Jaden's voice didn't rise. Why you really here? Straight. Direct. Uncomfortable. Marcus exhaled slowly, rubbing his palms together once before resting his forearms on his knees. Because I made a mistake, he said. Jaden's jaw flexed. That's one way to put it. Marcus didn't look away this time. I was young, he continued. Scared of losing everything I was working for. I thought if I just got successful first, I could come back and fix things later. Lila's voice was soft but firm. And did it work? Marcus's throat tightened. No. The word sat heavy in the room. Jaden leaned back slightly, studying him with the kind of careful skepticism that only came from years of unanswered questions. You know what's crazy? Jaden said after a moment. Marcus waited. The boy's voice stayed level. Mom never talked bad about you. That caught Marcus off guard. He glanced at Lila quickly. She didn't look away. Jaden continued, I used to ask where my dad was when I was little. You know what she'd say? Marcus's chest felt tight again. What? He asked quietly. Jaden's eyes didn't soften. She'd say, he's out there chasing something he thinks he needs. Marcus sucked in a slow breath. Lila finally spoke, her voice calm but tired around the edges. I wasn't going to poison him against you, she said. That wasn't my job. Marcus looked at her fully then. Why? He asked before he could stop himself. Lila held his gaze. Because one day, she said softly, I figured you'd have to live with your own choices. I didn't need to make it worse. That one hit deeper than anything Jaden had said. Marcus leaned back slowly, dragging a hand over his face. For the first time in a very long time. He looked tired. Not physically. But deep in the bones. I don't expect forgiveness, Marcus said quietly. Jaden crossed his arms. Good, he replied. Marcus almost smiled at that, not because it was funny, but because the honesty in the room felt strangely grounding. I just want a chance to do better now, Marcus continued. Whatever that looks like. Even if it's slow. Even if you don't trust me yet. Jaden's eyes narrowed slightly. You think showing up once fixes 14 years? No, Marcus said immediately. I know it doesn't. Silence again. Long. Heavy. Real. Finally, Jaden stood up and walked a few steps toward the window, staring out into the dark yard. His shoulders were tense, thoughts clearly moving fast behind his eyes. Marcus didn't rush him. Didn't push. Didn't try to negotiate the way old habits told him to. After nearly a full minute, Jaden spoke again, still facing the window. You really want to be in my life now? Marcus leaned forward slightly. Yes. Jaden turned slowly. His eyes were still guarded. Still cautious. But there was something else there now too. Not forgiveness. Not even close. But, consideration. We'll see, Jaden said. 2 words. Careful. Unpromising. But not closed. Marcus felt something in his chest loosen for the first time since stepping out of the SUV. Not relief. Not victory. Just, possibility. Lila watched the exchange quietly, her expression unreadable, but when Marcus glanced at her, she gave the smallest nod. Not approval. Not trust. Just acknowledgement. It was more than he deserved. Marcus stood slowly, adjusting his jacket out of habit, though his voice was softer than it had been all night. "I'll take whatever chance you give me," he said. Jaden didn't answer. But he didn't walk away either. And for the first time in 15 years, Marcus Cole understood something no business school had ever taught him. Some investments didn't pay off fast. Some took time. Patience. "See, I'll take whatever chance you give me," he said. Jaden didn't answer. But he didn't walk away either. And for the first time in 15 years, Marcus Cole understood something no business school had ever taught him. Some investments didn't pay off fast. Some took time. Patience. Consistency. Heart. As he stepped toward the door, Marcus paused, glancing back once more at the boy who had grown up without him. His biggest mistake. And maybe, if he didn't mess this up again, his greatest second chance. Outside, the Houston night felt different than when he'd arrived. Still heavy. Still warm. But not quite as suffocating. Marcus slid into the back of the SUV, staring quietly at the modest house through the tinted glass. For the first time in years, the ruthless billionaire wasn't thinking about his next deal. He was thinking about coming back tomorrow. And this time, not walking away.